Welcome to the BioWin Expert Talk podcast series. In this podcast, we will leave the floor to experts in the industry on specific relevant topics. During this series, animated by Janssen Belgium, you will hear different views on how Flemish and the Walloon biopharma ecosystems could reinforce each other to strengthen the position of Belgium globally. The speakers will deep dive into three important strategic axes: the chase for talent, the chase for innovation, and the chase for a supportive environment. This panel consists of Vincent Gauzin, Managing Director of WellBio, Baudouin Rigaud, Advisor of Secretary of State Thomas Dermine, and Philippe de Noël, Head of External R&D Vaccines, as well as Sonia Willems, Strategic Director of Janssen Benelux. How can we identify and reinforce the necessary bridges between the Flemish and Walloon ecosystems to strengthen the Belgian position globally? How can Belgium become the health and biotech valley of tomorrow?
Vincent Gauzin, Managing Director of WellBio.
Sure, and thank you as well for the invitation and this opportunity to participate at this very exciting roundtable during this great BioWin Day to speak about the chase for innovation, an exciting topic as well. Before diving into that topic, I wanted to maybe take a step back and by defining what innovation is. As you know, and as it was mentioned before, innovation starts with new breakthrough ideas, but ideas alone are not sufficient for innovation to happen. You also need this process to translate these new concepts into concrete applications for impact for patient and society. So when chasing innovation, we're discussing here, of course, disruptive innovation, which take its roots mostly into the discoveries made by fundamental research, as was mentioned mostly also with Mr. Rigaud. And you know that fundamental research is first and foremost a source of knowledge, but the results of fundamental research are usually unexpected, and they can take unexpected turns and reveal totally new concepts that are the drivers for progress and innovation. So here I wanted to maybe ask the questions of where we were standing in regards to fundamental research and cite a few numbers that were presented by McKinsey, the Knowledge for Growth conference a couple of months ago. That study gave a snapshot on the field of biotechnology from 2018 to 2020. And it revealed two key points, is that Belgium is a global leader in scientific publications with around 45% more scientific publications that average across Europe and almost twice as much as in the USA. And second, Belgium stands out also in terms of number of granted biotechnology patents, with 150% more than average across Europe and 60% more than USA. So great numbers, and as we heard earlier, we are very well placed in terms of our excellence in research. So this brings us more to the process of translating scientific invention into technological and clinical application. And elements that we think are essential for that on a WellBio perspective point of view. One key element that we find is that it's important to nurture a culture of innovation, which is looking at scientific results from two angles. One for advancing the knowledge and the other to see what it could be used for. As you all remember, I know not so long ago, fundamental research was considered as pure for knowledge only, and applying it to solve practical problems in connection to the industry was not necessarily well perceived. So that's important to nurture cultural innovation and continue building those bridges that were mentioned by Philippe earlier between the different worlds. For that, another element is to proactively support the scientists in every steps of the process. At WellBio, for example, we meet the WellBio investigators with their TTO representatives several times per year. As mentioned before, the results of fundamental research are difficult to predict, so it's important to engage on a regular basis to catch the unexpected results that could then evolve into new invention and innovation. And last but not least, we also have the competitivity clusters like BioWin in Health, which are essential partners to us and to many others. I think to accelerate also the translation of inventions at two levels. One, the clusters can really facilitate the connection between WellBio investigators and the other 11,000 researchers that Philippe mentioned at the beginning of the day, and industrial members of potential interest for specific topics. And second, clusters together also with our regional structures are a source of funding to advance translational projects as well, which is another key element to progress. So one place where I think there is always room to improve is in getting to know better, continue building those bridges with our next door neighbors, not only across the silos of academic, biotech, and pharma stakeholders, but also across the disciplines. We've heard that's very important for talent, developing the talents of tomorrow, which is what we need to do now. And we all work globally and collaborate globally, but we could, I think, benefit from the geographical proximity to exchange the idea and accelerate early innovation. As I've just mentioned, innovation, fundamental research is essential for the innovation, and Mr. Regu mentioned also the importance to support fundamental research. So I wanted to mention here that at WellBio, we're very grateful that the Walloon regions recently doubled our funding to support our ongoing call for WellBio programs. And we've seen in our own experience at WellBio the key benefits of providing generous and flexible fundings to the labs. It really enables the scientists to develop ambitious research programs and taking risks to really ask the key questions and the risky hypotheses. It can also provide stepping stones for the rising stars at the beginning of their career, the one that will also continue building bridges across a different world for advancing the science to have an impact for patients. And it also accelerates research because then the principal investigators can hire more senior scientists into their teams. So these are some of the key benefits which translate directly into knowledge and innovation.
Sonia Willems, Strategic Director of Janssen Benelux.
Yes, I think very interesting and totally agree. Also, WellBio brings stakeholders together, and I think that's the key of innovation, bringing people together and advancing innovation. And I think there's a lot of learning in the VIB work in Flanders. They are 25 years old, so they're a bit older. They have more experience and failures probably to learn from. So I really feel that what they have learned throughout their trajectory is the close cooperation with the universities, which is absolutely critical. And that's why I'm really very happy also with the additional money, Vincent, that you received from the government. I think it's absolutely critical that you can really build on the examples that are there and we advance in that collaboration. So I think there is an enormous opportunity still to have that link with the universities, also with the link between the Flemish and the Walloon universities. And I was very happy to see that there was a recent initiative where the VLIR and the CREF really work together with the 11 universities to see how they can really, accelerate innovation, which I think is definitely a great opportunity. And if you look at, the leverage between the two regions, I think a good example is cell therapy, where you see a lot of R&D in the north, in the Ghent region, and where you see the manufacturing and the biomanufacturing very strong in the south. And as we know, the future of cell therapy is very much the innovation is in the manufacturing. So you already see those two coming together, and it doesn't make any sense to build up the same R&D capabilities in the south and the same biomanufacturing capabilities in the north, but really to work together across regions and to see how we can really accelerate and combine and bridge those two. So one comment I still want to make, and it's actually a comment that I always have in the back of my mind that Paul Stoffels always makes. And he says, if you have an idea for an innovation, you can be pretty sure that somewhere in the world, somebody has had the same idea. Whether he's right or not, I don't know, but that's what he always says. So the critical thing is the speed to bring it to patients, or the speed that you bring it to valorization. So I think that's something we need to think about, how we can leverage, how we can strengthen the regions, how we can strengthen WellBio, but how we can work together to get that speed into the process so that we bring innovation faster to patients, not only in Belgium, but all over the world. And so that we are the first and that we can really talk about innovation coming from Belgium and not just a great idea that then somebody else was faster implementing. So to me, that speed is also a very important one.
Philippe de Noël, Head of External R&D Vaccines at GSK.
I'm not going to repeat all what has been said because this is all very important. I'm just probably going to insist on collaboration and maybe, I mean, just throw a kind of idea for action. I think collaboration indeed is essential. I mean, in our companies, for instance, I'm not really aware of a project which or of a product actually which is today on the market and that was not developed in collaboration. I mean, the times of Professor Sabin and his polio vaccine are over. It doesn't happen anymore. It's by collaborating that you innovate, and multidisciplinarity again is absolutely essential. I think today is the time to move away from the classical research projects. And I think this is really a level where the federal government could bring support and a differentiated support from the regional government. It would be instead of supporting research projects, research programs, to support strategic research teams and strategic collaborations between partners in Belgium, partners in Flanders and in Wallonia. And I think it is by moving away from the classical idea of we need to have a project together and maybe stepping back a little and saying, well, we need to work on a common theme which could lead potentially to projects, could lead potentially to solutions by having those strategic partnerships between organizations in Belgium that we could probably bring something new to our health and biotech innovation in the country.
Baudouin Rogout, Advisor of Secretary of State Thomas Dermin.
One of the themes that has been put onto the table is called Sandboxes. And this is not fully defined yet, but I think, and that's something that essentially we'll be working on in the cabinet of Thomas Dermin. And I think it is, again, to be defined, but the ideas would indeed to provide places, spaces of collaboration, being physical, being virtual, to be defined depending, and where indeed you could have maybe more experimental space, maybe earlier in more advanced technologies. Definitely, we're not talking about already clear research development project. We're talking a bit about dreaming what tomorrow could be, which ultimately might lead indeed to a series of more structured projects, and that then would get into the usual pipe. But that's the kind of things that we are considering. It's still very fuzzy. There are some examples around the world. I think the UK has been mentioned a couple of times here, and I think in one of the questions that seems to be going down that way. We might also consider to what extent and what room there might be, although it's a tricky one, around regulatory sandboxing, more relation to data, because data and data sharing is key, especially if we go for more rare disease or specialized, tailored, individualized therapies. The question of the data is going to be crucial. And how do you make that given the regulatory difficulties? It's more a legal question than frankly an IT question. And so therefore, to what extent is there room given GDPR to kind of to create some spaces in there? Anyway, so and that clearly would be multidisciplinary, because you probably need to have lawyers, by the way. So that's not even science. And so this is very much an idea that I find very exciting, very intriguing. So thank you very much, Philippe, for bringing that. And we'll probably be picking your brains, because we've done, as I told you, starting point with humility is a very good starting point. And try to see if we can come up with something and try to, again, put it together, maybe also in collaboration with the region if it makes sense, or Europe. We'll just have to see where it leads us.
Vinciane Gaussin, Managing Director of WellBio.
Yes, so to have strategic partnerships for speeding up innovation, I think it's essential, and I'll go back to maybe the keyword that I've heard throughout the day and even just right now, which is enhancing interactions between the different stakeholders, even before there is an actual project, which I think it's key. And that's what we've been trying to promote also at Node Scale at WellBio, to promote interaction between the scientists and the industry, even before you have an IP, intellectual property to discuss. And that has been an example we've seen with one of our projects where in this lab, which is from Jean-François Collet at WellBio investigator at Université Catholique de Louvain, where he's working on basic science on bacteria, and with the goal to maybe find understanding for new targets for antibiotics. So that would be like the normal course of fundamental research. But I wanted to exemplify also the fact that fundamental research can take unexpected turns, and it takes interacting with stakeholders, because in 2013 he started meeting with other industries using bacteria for producing biomedicines, just because they're working on the same bacteria. And it took time and years to say, growing to know each other and waiting for the right timing when it becomes strategically relevant for the company, of course, and the research is at the point where you can meet to start building projects together. And now they have ongoing partnerships that was signed end of last year, if I recall correctly, and they created a joint lab, mixed academia and industry, to continue working and developing, optimizing bacterial strains for the production of biomedicines. So that really shows the unexpected turn of fundamental research, that you can really need to leave open, but be there to catch those unexpected findings, and catching them, but not in a void, really in the context of your ecosystems, and knowing your ecosystem, so you can quickly, that's where the speed comes, make the connections to advance rapidly.
Thank you for listening to the BioWin Expert Talk podcast. We hope the content was valuable for your business and that it meets your expectations. Do not hesitate to contact the BioWin team if you have any further questions or if you need more information on a certain topic.